Money doesn't always disappear in one big, painful decision. Sometimes it leaves the house very quietly. A bag of salad softens at the back of the fridge. A second jar of sauce comes home because the first one was hidden behind something else. A packet of chicken sits there for a day too long until you're not quite sure about it anymore. And then, after a long day, the kitchen feels crowded, unclear, and slightly annoying to deal with. So dinner arrives in a paper bag. None of these moments feels like a financial mistake. They just feel normal. But over a week, or a month, they become a slow leak. And what's interesting is that most people try to fix this kind of leak by looking at the bank account. They open a budgeting app. They promise themselves they'll be more careful. They make a stricter plan for next week. But often, the decision was already made before the money left the account. It was made in the kitchen. Because the kitchen isn't only a place where food is stored and cooked. It's one of the places where everyday spending is quietly shaped. Not through dramatic choices, but through small moments of visibility, ease, friction, and attention. When the kitchen is unclear, money often becomes unclear as well. Food gets hidden. Things are forgotten. Ingredients are bought twice. Cooking feels harder than it needs to feel. And when that happens, the easiest solution is usually to buy more. More groceries, more snacks, more takeaway meals, more just-in-case food that might not actually get used. Many Japanese-inspired home habits are not really about having a perfect home. They're more practical than that. They're about making ordinary life easier to repeat. A place for things, a small reset, a way of seeing what is already there, a quiet respect for not wasting what still has value. That idea is often connected to mottainai, a Japanese word that carries a sense of regret when something useful is wasted. Not guilt in a heavy way, more like a small pause, a feeling of, this still had something to give. You don't need a beautiful kitchen for this. You don't need matching jars, a minimalist pantry, or a perfect weekly meal plan. You need a kitchen that tells you the truth. The first habit is to check the fridge before you buy anything. It sounds almost too obvious, which is probably why it's so easy to skip. Most of us shop with a vague memory of what we think is at home. We remember the meals we planned in our head, not the actual ingredients sitting on the shelves. So we buy another bag of carrots, another tub of yogurt, another block of cheese. And the older food gets pushed back a little further. A better habit is to pause before leaving the house or before placing an online order and open the fridge properly. Not a quick glance while your mind is already somewhere else. A real look. What needs using? What is nearly finished? What has already been cooked? What fresh food is close to turning? That small check changes the shopping list. It stops being a wish list and becomes a response to what is already there. You're no longer buying for an imagined version of the week. You're buying around the food your real kitchen already contains. The second habit is to create an eat first area. In many kitchens, the food that most needs attention is the easiest to miss. Half an onion wrapped in foil, cooked rice in a bowl, 2 tomatoes starting to soften, a small piece of cheese, a few spoonfuls of curry. These things are not useless. They're just quiet. And quiet food loses. So give that food a visible home. It might be one clear box in the fridge. It might be the front corner of a shelf. It might be a plate with a cover. The rule is simple. This is the food to eat first. In Japanese-inspired organizing, the point is not always to own less just for the sake of owning less. Often, the point is to reduce confusion, to make the next right action easier to see. An Eat First area does that. It removes a handful of small decisions. When you open the fridge, you don't have to search through everything and reconstruct the whole kitchen in your mind. The fridge gives you a simple instruction. Start here. This matters because waste often happens in the space between intention and attention. You meant to use the leftovers. You meant to finish the spinach. You meant to remember the soup. But the day moved on. A visible area brings the decision back into view. The third habit is to cook from what remains. This is slightly different from cooking from a recipe. A recipe begins with an idea, then asks you to collect the ingredients. Cooking from what remains begins with the ingredients, then asks what they can become. A few vegetables can become fried rice, soup, an omelet, pasta sauce, or a simple tray bake. Leftover potatoes can become a breakfast hash. Cooked chicken can go into a noodle bowl. A spoonful of beans, curry, or roasted vegetables can become tomorrow's lunch with rice. This kind of cooking is not glamorous. It probably won't look impressive in a photograph. But it is deeply useful. It also builds a quieter kind of confidence. You stop seeing the fridge as a place full of incomplete meals. You start seeing it as a place full of possible next steps. That shift saves money because it lowers the need to start from nothing every evening. And starting from nothing is often where spending begins. The fourth habit is to keep the kitchen clean enough that you want to cook. Not spotless, not staged, not perfect. Just clean enough to begin. This may be one of the most overlooked money habits because it doesn't look financial. But a messy kitchen makes cooking feel much bigger than it actually is. If the sink is full, the chopping board is buried, the hob is sticky, and the counter is crowded, then cooking is no longer the first task. First, you have to clear space. Then wash something. Then find the pan. Then deal with yesterday. At that point, ordering food doesn't feel lazy. It feels understandable. So the habit is not simply be tidier. That's too vague to be useful. The habit is to protect the starting point. Keep one stretch of counter clear. Keep one knife and chopping board easy to reach. Keep the hob usable. Don't let the sink become a storage area for decisions you don't want to make yet. A kitchen that is ready to begin saves money because it reduces the emotional cost of cooking. And quite often we don't avoid cooking because the meal itself is difficult. We avoid it because the room makes the first step feel heavy. The fifth habit is to use clear containers. Again, this is not about making your fridge look like something online. It's about visibility. Opaque containers turn food into a mystery. You might think you'll remember what's inside, but you won't always. And when you're tired, you're probably not going to open every tub, smell everything, and work out what needs using. So the food becomes invisible. And invisible food is very close to wasted food. Clear containers create a small form of honesty. You can see the rice. You can see the chopped cucumber. You can see the stew, the berries, the half-used peppers. You can also see when there is already enough. That matters more than it sounds. When food is visible, you're less likely to buy duplicates. You don't have to rely on memory. The kitchen shows you what is there. And enough is one of the most useful words a kitchen can teach. The sixth habit is to divide portions before you need them. Many people cook a meal, put the whole pot away, and hope they'll use it sensibly later. But later is not always a good decision-making environment. Later is when people are tired, hungry, rushed, distracted, or trying to get through the next thing. So make the decision while your energy is still there. One portion for tonight, one for lunch tomorrow, one for the freezer, maybe one small container for the eat first area. This helps with two common problems. The first is eating more than you meant to, simply because the food is there and still warm and easy to take from. The second is leaving a large amount untouched because nobody wants to deal with it. Portioning is not about being strict. It's about reducing friction for the future. You're making tomorrow's useful decision while today still has a little capacity left. The seventh habit is to plan 3 basic meals each week. Not 7, not a full calendar, not a beautifully organized plan that collapses the moment real life interrupts it. Just 3. A complete meal plan can sound sensible, but for many people it becomes too rigid. Someone gets home late. Plans change. Energy drops. The weather is awful. You don't fancy the meal you planned 3 days ago. Then the plan breaks, and the food bought for that plan begins drifting towards waste. 3 basic meals gives you structure without trapping you. They should be meals you can make without much thinking. A rice bowl, a simple pasta, soup, a stir-fry, jacket potatoes with toppings, eggs with vegetables and toast. Nothing impressive, nothing complicated. Just dependable meals that stop the evening question from becoming expensive. Because what are we eating can be a surprisingly costly question when there is no easy answer. This is very close to the spirit of Kaizen. Small improvements that last because they are not too ambitious. 3 repeatable meals can carry more of the week than a perfect plan you abandon by Wednesday. The 8th habit is not to shop when you are hungry. It's familiar advice, but it's familiar because it's true. Hunger changes the feeling of a shopping trip. Food that would normally seem optional starts to feel necessary. Snacks become more persuasive. Ready meals look more reasonable. Portions get bigger. Treats multiply. The future becomes less important than solving the feeling in your body right now. That isn't a character flaw. It's a predictable pattern. So design around it. Eat something small before you shop. Drink some water. Make the list after looking in the kitchen, not while wandering through the aisles. And if you shop online, try not to fill the basket late at night when you're tired and craving ease. A calmer body makes a clearer basket. The 9th habit is to buy less but use all of it. This can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if a full fridge makes you feel safe. For many people, a stocked kitchen feels responsible. It feels prepared. It feels like you're looking after the week ahead. But too much food creates its own pressure. It hides what matters. It makes the fridge harder to read. It increases the chance that something will spoil before you reach it. A slightly emptier fridge is often more useful than a full one. Buying less doesn't mean going without. It means buying closer to your real life. Not the life where you cook from scratch every evening with endless energy. The real one. The one with late meetings, wet weather, tired evenings, forgotten lunches, and days when toast is a perfectly acceptable dinner. When you buy for your actual week, not your ideal week, you waste less. And you begin to feel a quiet satisfaction in finishing things. The last apple. The final portion of soup. The vegetables used before they soften. That kind of completion makes the kitchen feel calmer. It also makes spending feel more deliberate, because the food you buy is actually becoming food you eat. The 10th habit is a 5-minute kitchen reset after dinner. Not a full clean, not the big evening tidy that sounds sensible but feels so tiring that you avoid it completely. Just 5 minutes to return the kitchen to a usable state. Put leftovers into clear containers. Move anything urgent into the Eat First area. Wipe the surface you'll need tomorrow. Wash the knife. Load the dishwasher or stack the dishes in a way that feels manageable. Put breakfast items where they're easy to reach. 5 minutes after dinner can save far more than 5 minutes the next day. It stops the kitchen becoming a place you avoid in the morning. It makes breakfast easier. It makes lunch more likely. It makes tomorrow's cooking feel possible before tomorrow has even started. This is how small systems help. They don't depend on a sudden burst of discipline. They quietly remove the obstacles that usually make discipline harder than it needs to be. And that is the deeper point behind all 10 habits. Saving money in the kitchen is rarely about becoming stricter. It's about noticing the small places where money leaks out through confusion. Food hidden at the back of the fridge is a money leak. A messy counter can be a money leak. Shopping without looking first is a money leak. Buying for an imaginary version of your week is a money leak. Leaving tomorrow's decisions completely unprepared is a money leak. None of this requires a perfect home. It asks for a kitchen that is a little clearer, a little easier to read, a little kinder to the person who has to use it at the end of an ordinary day. Because a calm kitchen does something very practical. It helps you see what you have. It helps you use what you bought. It makes cooking feel less like a negotiation. It turns leftovers back into food, instead of letting them become a quiet source of guilt. And over time, these small habits do add up. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in fewer forgotten ingredients, fewer duplicate purchases, fewer expensive meals ordered because the kitchen felt impossible. Fewer moments where good food becomes waste simply because it was out of sight. Saving money doesn't always begin with a spreadsheet. Sometimes it begins when you open the fridge before you shop. Sometimes it begins with one clear container. Sometimes it begins with a small space on the shelf that means, in your own mind, eat this first. And sometimes the most financially sensible thing you can do is spend 5 quiet minutes after dinner returning the kitchen to a place you'll want to enter tomorrow.